I didn't lose my wife the day she took her last breath. I actually lost her on an ordinary Tuesday night 5 years before that, the moment she quietly closed her book. Never confuse stability with happiness, because the most brutal killer of marriage isn't adultery or violence, but the deadly silence disguised under the cover of stability. People often bring over casseroles and look at me with pity in their eyes. They think the silence in this wooden house on the coast of Nova Scotia is the hardest thing to bear for a widower who lost Helen 3 years ago. But I am 77 years old now, and I only have enough time left to be honest with myself. This morning, sitting on the porch watching the fog roll in over the water, holding a cup of coffee that had gone stone cold, I was forced to confess a painful thing. This silence didn't arrive with the funeral. It moved in with us decades ago. It sat right there between us at the dinner table while I was busy calculating lumber lots. It lay between us in bed every time I turned my back because of exhaustion. I am a carpenter. I spent my whole life building sturdy frames. I built the table she ate at. I built the bed frame where she took her final breath. I took pride in being a good husband simply because I didn't drink, didn't gamble, and always fixed the roof the moment it leaked. I was naive enough to think that providing was the same thing as presence. I thought that just because I didn't leave meant I was close to her. But looking at that empty rocking chair over there, I realized the horrifying truth. I didn't lose my wife 3 years ago. I lost her 30 years ago, quietly, right while I was sitting there in the flesh beside her. And if you are sitting there believing your marriage is fine, just because you too never fight, then listen to me, because you might be in more danger than those couples screaming at each other out there. 5 years after that fateful Tuesday night, Helen fell ill. Pancreatic cancer. It came fast and brutal, like a winter storm sweeping across the Nova Scotia coast. In those final weeks, I sat by her bedside without leaving for a second. I held her hand, adjusted her pillows, trying to cram 30 years of conversation into 30 short days of dying. I asked her about her books. I asked her about her dream of standing at a lectern teaching. I was desperate to hear that excited voice again, the very voice I had extinguished. But by then, the painkillers and the habit of silence stretching over decades had built a wall too thick to breach. She just looked at me, gave a weak smile, a forgiving smile, but distant. She had really left already. Her soul had moved out of this house long before her heart stopped beating. When the funeral was over and the last neighbor had gone home, I sat back in my old armchair. I found the book she had once intended to read to me, still resting on the shelf, covered in a thin layer of dust. I opened it. I wanted to tell her, "I'm listening, Helen. Read to me. I'm not busy anymore." But the room only gave me back a cold stillness. That was when the truth hit me like a sledgehammer. I realized that later is not a promise. It is the cruelest lie of all. I had assumed there would always be time to be a real husband after I finished the role of a carpenter, a breadwinner. But life doesn't operate on my schedule. You can't deposit love into a savings account and expect to withdraw both principal and interest at the end of your life. Now I have all the time in the world. The wood shop is closed, the bills are paid, The roof is solid, but the person I wanted to shelter under this roof is gone, and she took with her the warmth that I foolishly refused. I was never a bad husband in the way people usually condemn. I didn't blow money on booze, never raised my voice or raised a hand against her. My carpenter's wages were always placed neatly on the kitchen table every Friday afternoon. We went to church together, visited the grandkids on Thanksgiving, shoveled snow off the porch together. From the outside, we were as solid as the oak table I built in 1985. But my fatal mistake was equating peace and quiet with happiness. I thought no war meant peace. The reality is for 30 years, I became a master fugitive in my own home. I hid in the dusty workshop after dinner, hid behind the morning newspaper to avoid my wife's gaze. I used old age and fatigue as excuses to refuse the walks on the beach she craved. I never asked Helen about the vast emptiness in her heart when the children left the nest. I ignored her youthful dream, the dream of becoming a literature teacher, of standing at a podium, talking about poetry instead of standing in the kitchen all day. I took her homemaking for granted, viewed it as a duty, as a given, and never once encouraged her to live for herself. I let the conversations between husband and wife wither into boring exchanges about bills and the weather. I turned my life partner into a roommate. My sin didn't lie in what I did, but in what I didn't do. I didn't cause a storm, but I refused to water the plant of love nonchalantly, watching it wither and die, while still priding myself on being a dedicated gardener. It didn't happen overnight. The distance didn't strike loudly like a northern blizzard. No. It was the accumulation of thousands of times I said the word later, soft and quiet as the sawdust settling on the workshop floor every day. Every time Helen walked in with 2 cups of hot tea, wanting me to stop for a moment to watch the first snowfall of the season, I would say, without looking up, "Wait until I finish sanding this chair leg." Every time she timidly held up a brochure for an evening teaching course in Halifax, eyes sparkling with hope, I would say, "Wait until we pay off this bank loan, honey. Then you can study whatever you want." I turned our lives into one giant waiting room. We were always waiting for a perfect time, someday, when money was plentiful and health was still good. But time is a master con artist. It slips by smoothly, silently. Helen's hair turned from chestnut brown to ash gray. The wrinkles around her eyes deepened, and that tomorrow I promised, so she could live for herself, so we could truly see each other. It kept receding further toward the horizon. I thought I was accumulating security for the future, but in reality, I was selling off the present cheap. I gambled that our time was infinite, and that was the stupidest bet a man could ever make, only to lose everything on a mediocre Tuesday afternoon when a tiny detail changed everything forever. The moment I realized I had lost wasn't during a storm or an earth-shattering argument. It happened on an ordinary Tuesday evening about 5 years before Helen passed away. At the time, I was sitting at the dining table buried in calculations for a load of cedar lumber I'd just brought in to fix the barn roof. Helen was standing by the window, looking out at the sea, holding an old literature book that she loved. Suddenly, she turned around, her eyes lighting up with a rare bit of excitement, and started reading a passage of poetry aloud to me. She wanted to share a bit of beauty, a piece of her soul with me. And I, God forgive me, didn't even lift my head from that ledger full of dry numbers. I just raised a hand to signal silence and said a sentence I had said 1,000 times before. Don't bother me right now, Helen. I'm in the middle of counting. One wrong number and the whole day's work is gone. Usually she would sigh, or she would sit down and wait for me to finish. But this time was different. The room fell into a strange silence. I heard the sound of the book closing. It wasn't an angry slam. It was a very soft, very quiet, but decisive click, like the sound of a key turning in a lock for the final time. She didn't argue. She didn't beg. She just walked past me, placed her hand lightly on my shoulder, a casual touch, like one reserved for a stranger, and said, "It's okay, Leonard. I won't bother you again." And she kept her word. She never read poetry to me again. She never talked about her dream of standing at the lectern again. The soft sound of that book closing that evening was the sound of Helen letting go. She had accepted that in this marriage she was on her own. I had protected the numbers in my ledger, but in that very moment I lost my wife forever, even while she was still living and breathing right beside me. I spent my whole life worshipping stability. As a carpenter, I believed that if the foundation is solid, if the joints are tight, then that house is perfect. I applied that same rigid principle to my marriage. I believed a good husband is one who never lets his wife worry about bread and butter. I thought that doing nothing wrong, no affairs, no addictions, no violence, meant I was doing right. But the naked truth I realized sitting within these 4 silent walls is this. I was completely wrong about the unit of measurement for love. I traded closeness for correctness. I thought fixing a rusty faucet was more important than sitting down to listen to her talk about a poem she just read. I thought safety was the ultimate destination, whereas it should have only been the foundation to build connection upon. A house that doesn't leak isn't a home. It's just a dry box. I provided Helen with a dry box for 40 years, but I let her soul freeze to death inside it. I thought a man's success was measured by his wife lacking nothing material. Now I understand the most terrifying lack isn't a lack of money, but a lack of feeling seen, of being understood. I won at being a provider, but I lost everything at being a soulmate. I cannot turn back time to hear that poem. I cannot put down that ledger on that Tuesday night 5 years ago. That opportunity lies buried beneath the cold earth along with Helen. Now I am just an old man delivering a monologue to the sound of the Atlantic waves. And believe me, the ocean never answers human regrets. But you are different. You still possess the most precious asset that I squandered, the present tense. That person might be in the very next room, might be puttering around in the kitchen, or sitting watching TV alone in a silence you mistake for peace. Don't wait for tomorrow. Don't wait until you are free. Stand up right now. Walk into that room. Put the phone down, close the laptop. Look into their eyes. Really look at them, not through them, and ask a question from the heart. Not, "What's for dinner?" but, "How are you feeling today?" Listen to the answer as if it were the only sound on earth. Don't let stability lull you to sleep until you wake up with a start in a house that is large but empty. Break that silence right now before it becomes eternal. I will sit back here with this stone-cold coffee and let you return to your busy life. But before you leave, I want to leave you with a question. a question I wish I had been brave enough to ask myself on that fateful Tuesday night. Don't worry, I'm not asking you to do anything grand. I just want you to look deep into the space between you and the person lying next to you every night. What is filling that gap? Is it the comfortable silence of understanding, or is it the heavy silence of things never said? Are you holding back a compliment, a sincere inquiry, or a tender gesture for some suitable occasion in the future? We often lie to ourselves that love can be stored in a glass cabinet saved for tomorrow. But love isn't a display item. So be honest with yourself tonight. Is there something belonging to your partner's heart that you have unintentionally made wait longer than a human life can endure?